Well, it's ChatGPT's second birthday today, and to celebrate, Elon Musk, who we can say is one of the fathers of OpenAI, of ChatGPT, well, he files for injunction to halt OpenAI's transition to a for-profit model. So Elon Musk is accusing OpenAI, Sam Altman, President Greg Brockman, a lot of the people in Microsoft, etc., of various illicit activities, and he's looking to stop them. So the allegations include discouraging investors from backing OpenAI rivals like Musk's own AI company, xAI. We have benefiting from wrongfully obtained, competitively sensitive information through OpenAI's connection with Microsoft, and converting OpenAI's governance structure to a for-profit and transferring any material assets, including intellectual property owned, held, or controlled by OpenAI into this new for-profit company, or at least a for-profit structure, and causing OpenAI to do business with organizations in which any defendant has a material financial interest. So here's a part from this document. So it says it would be one thing if Microsoft were once again engaging in anti-competitive conduct, this time of OpenAI. It would be another if OpenAI, aided and abetted by Microsoft, were violating the terms of Musk's foundational contributions to the charity. So Elon Musk was one of the original founders. The biggest kind of a financial backer of this company, initially when it was being formed. But OpenAI and Microsoft together exploiting Musk's donations so that they can build a for-profit monopoly, one now specifically targeting xAI, is just too much. Plaintiffs and the public need a pause. OpenAI's path from nonprofit to a for-profit behemoth is replete with per se anti-competitive practices, flagrant breaches of its charitable mission, and rampant self-dealing. Right, they took Satya Nadella's quote here. So they're saying Microsoft, a self-proclaimed competitor of OpenAI, right? So they are supposed to be competitors. They're supposed to compete against one another. They're saying that Microsoft should not be in there, below them, above them, and around them, right? So this was Satya Nadella, I believe, that said that during the firing of Sam Altman to kind of try to calm his shareholders, investors in Microsoft, saying, oh, don't worry about it. Like, we're in there in OpenAI. We're below them, around them, above them, whatever. So here, Elon Musk and his legal team are kind of pointing out why would they be saying that about their competitor? If that's supposed to be somebody they're competing against, why are they like all around them and above them, etc.? And these two enterprises, OpenAI and Microsoft, through a series of exclusive arrangements, seized control of nearly 70% of the market for generative artificial intelligence products, a market with profound network effects. Microsoft and OpenAI now seek to cement this dominance by cutting off competitors' access to investment capital, a group boycott. So it continues, so OpenAI must play by the same rules as everybody else. It cannot lumber about the marketplace as a Frankenstein, stitched together from whatever corporate forms serve the pecuniary interests of Microsoft and Altman at any given moment. Pecuniary kind of just means money, like money-driven, money interests, whatever financial interests of Microsoft and Altman, whatever those interests are at any given moment, they sort of like spin up a corporate structure that best benefits that. So if it's better for them to be a nonprofit, that's what they are. If it's better to flip it over to be a for-profit company, that's what they become. That's the point that Elon is making here. Now, by the way, if you're wondering why is any of this important, so here on the right, this is Rose Chan Loui. Rose is the founding executive director for the Lowell Milken Center on Philanthropy and Nonprofits at UCLA Law. And so this is somebody that spent decades practicing law with a particular focus on nonprofits and tax controversies. She even published a paper, Board Control of a Charity Subsidiary, the Saga of OpenAI. So this is somebody that's paying a lot of attention to exactly kind of what we're talking about. And so just really fast, here's her take on kind of why this is so important. By the way, this is from the 80,000 Hours podcast. I'll leave a link down below if you want to check it out. Here's kind of the intro to it, where I think they do a really good job of outlining why this matters and what the big deal is. Take a listen.
OpenAI has it's touted its nonprofit structure as one of the reasons it could be trusted and should be taken seriously. Its CEO Sam Altman said in 2017 that OpenAI is a nonprofit because we don't ever want to be making decisions that benefit shareholders. The only people we want to be accountable to is humanity as a whole. And that was a pretty kind of typical statement around that time, as I recall. And he even said of the nonprofit board in June last year, he famously said, no one person should be trusted here. I don't have super voting shares. The board can fire me. And I think that's important. So its legal structure was very much kind of not an accident or an oversight. right? It was pretty central, I think, to the organization's self-conception and certainly its public presentation. Can you quickly explain to us like what that legal structure has been and what we think they're trying to change it into?
Sure, Rob. Yeah, so as you said, it was very carefully structured. And in the beginning, in 2015, it was pretty straightforward. It was founded as a scientific research organization, and the specific purpose was to provide funding for research, development, and distribution of technology related to AI. Then they also made the promise that the resulting technology will benefit the public and the corporation will seek to open source technology for the public benefit when applicable. So I just want to emphasize here that that is the legal purpose that is in the certificate of incorporation with the state of Delaware. Then in its registration with the California Attorney General, it said that its goal is to engage in research activities that advance digital intelligence in the way that is most likely to benefit humanity as a whole, unconstrained by a need to generate financial return. So just a little distinction here. That sounds more aspirational. Now, by 2019, they had been able to raise $130 million of their initial $1 billion goal. So they decided then that charitable donations were not going to be enough to achieve their charitable purpose of providing funding for research and development and distribution of technology related to AI. So they set up this structure that would accommodate and attract investors. First step was to form an LP, a limited partnership under OpenAI, which would be owned by the nonprofit, as well as employees and some early investors. That LP would be governed by the nonprofit. It's at this level that Microsoft invested. And interestingly, OpenAI on their website used to call Microsoft a minority owner, but they clarified on their website in December 2023 that no, it's only they only have a profits interest in OpenAI LLC. We think that is in response to inquiries by various antitrust authorities. So they form a corporate foundation and they control entirely the corporate foundation.
And so there's the for-profit business, there's the nonprofit foundation, and those are kind of in broad strokes, those are the two entities. And
Yes. Yeah, that's why, it's a lot more complicated if you draw out the whole thing. But yes, it's a nonprofit at the very top. It's the parent, which is different from a lot of corporate foundations where, a corporation makes a lot of money and then they decide we would like to do good. So they form a corporate foundation and they control entirely the corporate foundation, right? Here, the nonprofit is the genesis of this organization. And then if I could, I just thought there's 5, I think, features that were very carefully set up to protect purpose.
Sure, go for it.
So one is that, as we've said, the nonprofit has complete control of the LLC through this general partner and the nonprofit board. And then secondly, the nonprofit board is committed to the nonprofit purpose of the nonprofit and defined publicly by OpenAI as development of AI that is AGI, that is broadly beneficial. And third, the nonprofit board was supposed to remain majority independent. But they define independent as not having any equity in OpenAI. So as other people have criticized, Sam Altman, while he didn't have equity in OpenAI, had a lot of other interests in partners.
Yeah, okay, it's hard to say that he's independent of OpenAI in a common sense. Yeah,
in the common sense of the word. So that's why I say this is how they define it. The fourth is that profit allocated to investors and employees is capped, as we've talked about. So all residual value created above those caps are to go to the nonprofit, quote, for the benefit of humanity. But it's a pretty high threshold. Then fifth, Microsoft and other investors do not participate in profits from or have any rights to IP once OpenAI has reached AGI, defined, again, broadly speaking, as artificial intelligence that is smarter than human intelligence. And the nonprofit board, under the current terms, determines when OpenAI has attained AGI. So they put a lot of things in there to protect purpose.
Yeah. So a lot of thought went into thinking about how can we get it so that, presumably they were thinking there's a lot of money here, like Microsoft might try to push us around. How are we going to ensure that the nonprofit foundation can remain true true to its non-profit purpose of building AGI that benefits all of humanity and not being corrupted by profit incentives. And so that was like part of the goal. And I guess people can judge for themselves, I guess, at the end of this conversation, how well that has gone.
Okay, so this is how everything has been set up until now. This is kind of what they tried to accomplish with it, like she was saying, to try to protect the purpose, to build AGI that benefits everybody, all of humanity. And it seems like a lot of thought went into that. A lot of rules were made so that it would not be corrupted by profit motives. The other important thing I think that's important to mention here is that a lot of the people that signed up to work on this nonprofit, on this research lab, some of the higher tiered AI researchers, the people that are really trying to contribute as much as they can to science, to humanity, I think it's very plausible to say it's very likely that they would not have joined OpenAI if it was a profit first company. If OpenAI came out in the beginning and say, hey, our goal is to, create AGI, make billions and trillions of dollars and just like live it up. A lot of these people, perhaps Ilya Sutskever, a lot of those top tier researchers might not have joined that because they would not be interested in doing that. They would have preferred to join something that is pure research, which is kind of another point to consider here. You know what I mean? If you open up a company that has certain guidelines and rules and the people that join it are thinking that they're contributing to that company that will stay that way. And then, 5+ years go by and then that company gets flipped around, actually closer to 10 now that I'm thinking about it. And that company structure gets flipped around, I mean, certainly that's going to seem like a bait and switch, right? They were promised that they were contributing to something that's going to benefit all of humanity, right? This kind of positive, long-term, wonderful thing, like moving science forward. And it gets flipped to, no, like, let's get investors on board. Let's get, Microsoft on board. Let's use that to grow, to get market share, etc. So really fast, I really enjoy how these people have explained what's happening. I think they're explaining it very, very clearly. So here's them going over exactly what it is that OpenAI is trying to accomplish with this sort of shift in corporate structure.
What is it that they're trying to change now?
Thank you. Yes. So here we are in 2024. They make the announcement that OpenAI is going to restructure so that the nonprofit will no longer control the for-profit entities. What they're talking about, well, first of all, they had another round of funding, raised another $6.6 billion. And these new investors were able to get a deal that OpenAI would have 2 years to complete this conversion, or they would have to return the $6.6 billion of funding. The new investors are also seeking to remove the caps on investment returns, at least for them and perhaps for old investors. Not sure where that is in negotiations.
So they previously agreed that their investment would have at most 100-fold return. And now they're trying to get out of that basically, or change that. So there isn't a cap anymore.
Correct. And then, I'm not the best at math, but I thought, okay, if you have 10 billion of Microsoft, that means 100 times means a trillion.
A trillion, yeah.
A trillion,
so
right?
So a substantial valuation.
Yes. So I don't know if there's anything comparable.
So that's a great podcast to listen to, an hour and a half. They do a deep dive into exactly what's happening with OpenAI and the shifting of the corporate structure. But going back to these core documents, so he's saying, again, we can't just have Microsoft and Sam Altman kind of switch the corporate structure based on whatever's best for them in that moment. And he continues, more fundamentally, the charity should never have been put in this position. Musk made absolutely clear that his donations, the big donation that he did that jump-started OpenAI basically, which, as I say here, established and sustained OpenAI for years, they were conditioned on Altman's and Brockman's firm commitment to operate as a nonprofit devoted to the public good. And so he's saying an injunction to preserve what is left of OpenAI's nonprofit character, free from self-dealing, is the only appropriate remedy. So when everything began in 2015, Altman approached Musk with a detailed plan to form this AI charity, OpenAI, and he made promises that it would remain a nonprofit for the development and broad distribution of open and safe AI for the public benefit. And Altman also promised that the technology developed by this nonprofit would be owned by it. And based on these commitments, Musk agreed to co-found and fund OpenAI, lending his name and credibility to help attract the talented AI scientists necessary to make OpenAI a success. And I remember reading this email earlier that they're referencing here. We read it in one of the previous videos we did on the Musk versus Altman lawsuit. So Altman and Brockman did propose converting OpenAI to a for-profit enterprise to attract more investments, more funding, more capital. in 2017, as early as 2017, and Musk rejected the idea, saying either go do something on your own or continue with OpenAI as a nonprofit. I will no longer fund OpenAI until you have made a firm commitment to stay, or I'm just being a fool who's essentially providing free funding to a startup. Discussions are over. And then the second dividing line marks Microsoft's evolution from partner to co-conspirator, when OpenAI was a charity operating as a counterweight against Google, that was the big sort of fear in Elon Musk and probably Sam Altman's eyes, is that Google was likely going to become the number one AI company, the monopoly on AI. Nobody was close. That was the talk at the time. Back in 2014, 2015, kind of in that time, no one else was close, and everybody thought, okay, they're going to be the AI company, and no one else was even in the running. So this was created, OpenAI was created as kind of a counterbalance, counterweight against Google. So in terms of Microsoft, there was an arguable value in partnering with an establishing tech company, especially one positioned to provide OpenAI with its most important raw material, compute. And of course, Microsoft, which was developing its own generative AI, was keen to harness OpenAI's potential. And of course, Microsoft took a stake in the for-profit entities, getting some of the profits from OpenAI. They're saying that Microsoft siphoned off nonprofits' staff and intellectual property from OpenAI. And also, this was compounded by Microsoft securing an exclusive license to OpenAI's technology, therefore becoming its exclusive supplier and exclusive licensee. Throughout this process, Altman engaged in a rampant self-dealing. And in November, when the board of directors became aware of Altman's numerous conflicts of interests and deceptions, they fired him. But Microsoft, unwilling to let its insider ally be ousted, leveraged its position to force the board members who fired Altman to reinstate him and resign. In the process, it obtained for itself an influential non-voting director seat filled by Microsoft executive Deanna Templeton. This gave Microsoft, an admitted competitor to OpenAI, open access to OpenAI's proprietary information. And this was not OpenAI's first or last interlocking directorate, as Reid Hoffman has been serving simultaneously on the boards of OpenAI, Microsoft, and his own AI startup, Inflection AI. So Microsoft's critical role in reinstating Altman and purging the nonprofit's board demonstrated Microsoft's effective control over OpenAI. Since then, OpenAI and Microsoft have operated in lockstep, controlling nearly 70% of the generative AI market while accelerating anti-competitive conduct. And here he's saying that they became everything they were supposed to not be: a closed source, for-profit monopoly that rushes unsafe AI products to market for private commercial gain. So in response, Musk launched xAI in 2023. So that's Grok. That's part of the xAI company. But he's claiming that the OpenAI's large valuation and market dominance, they were not enough for Microsoft and Altman. He's saying that Altman and OpenAI, acting in concert with Microsoft, expressly conditioned their acceptance of any investment on the investors' agreement not to fund OpenAI's competitors, specifically naming xAI. So anyone, according to this, allegedly, as they say, if you were funding OpenAI, if you wanted to invest in OpenAI, you could not invest in xAI, Elon Musk's company. And not only xAI you could invest in, it looks like they also targeted other safety-focused companies, such as Safe Superintelligence, right? So this is Dr. Ilya Sutskever, right? The person that left OpenAI. He started his very own AI company called SSI, Safe Superintelligence. And here they're saying he left OpenAI over concerns that it no longer prioritized safety. So this is interesting. So yeah, if this is true, it sounds like, yeah, they're saying, you want to invest with OpenAI, do not invest in any of these competitors. Don't invest in xAI, don't invest in Ilya Sutskever and SSI. You are not allowed to do that. A couple of other things that jump out at me from this document. So it sounds like Reid Hoffman's, who is on the board of OpenAI, on the board of Microsoft, and also has his own AI startup. So it sounds like Hoffman became a key negotiating force between Microsoft and the Altman-Brockman team. And even after leaving OpenAI's board, Hoffman continues to reference his knowledge of non-public OpenAI information. They also kind of give some details of this whole idea that Microsoft put somebody on the board of OpenAI so that they could coordinate some of the business decisions. This happened after Sam Altman got fired. So after the board fired Altman, Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella expressed frustrations that Microsoft had not been consulted about the firing, and he vowed Microsoft would be more involved moving forward to avoid surprises. In an interview 4 days after Altman's firing, Nadella spoke on this matter. As a partner, I think it doesn't mean that you deserve to be consulted on big decisions. So he told the OpenAI's board, hey, whatever it is that you're doing, just make sure that you don't compromise the mission of the organization in which we have invested and the people who are behind that we bet on. one thing I'll be very, very clear on is we are never going to be back in a situation where we get surprised like this ever again. So that's his whole thing. He just didn't want to be surprised by these decisions. And certainly it was kind of like this spur of the moment, very sudden firing. I think just a handful of people knew it was going to happen. I think Sam Altman was surprised. Most people were surprised. I think there was like 3 or 4 people that knew, if I recall correctly. I think it was the people on the board, Mira Murati, and that might have been it. And then 8 days later after that speech, after talking to OpenAI by Satya Nadella, Microsoft obtained its seat on OpenAI's board. And later, of course, it withdrew amid intense antitrust scrutiny from US and European regulators. Also, they specifically here mentioned Altman and his alleged self-dealing, right? So him sort of, even though he doesn't have equity of the company, trying to profit from, his control over it, basically. So first and foremost, Altman has engaged in or preparing to engage in at least the following self-dealing transactions. Forming and operating these for-profit entities that have contractual relationship to OpenAI, switching OpenAI to a for-profit structure, right? Probably earning billions of dollars in the process. But more specifically, they mention Rain AI, right? So in 2019, he caused OpenAI to contract with Rain AI, a company which has a material financial interest for $51 million worth of computer chips. So we've covered this in a previous video quite a while ago. So I believe these were the neuromorphic chips, so chips that were created for AI. They have some sort of prototype that is a little bit more like the human brain. Instead of like digital and binary, it's a little bit more like the human brain. And so Rain, their headquarters are not that far from OpenAI's headquarters in San Francisco or wherever they used to be, but they used to be like a few blocks apart. So it sounds like Sam Altman had a financial interest in that company as well as controlling OpenAI, and he made them have that contract. Right in 2020, he obtained a material financial interest in Humane, like the Humane pin, which contracted to use OpenAI's technology to power its services, and obtain a material financial interest in Limitless. So I haven't heard about this one. So we've talked about Rain before, we've talked about Humane before. Limitless, which is another hardware company which contracted to use OpenAI's technology for its services. Okay, I remember this thing. So that pendant, this clip-on pendant, we did briefly cover it. So I'm not sure what state that's in currently, if they've launched or not. I haven't been following, but it looks like there's another company that Sam Altman has a financial interest in that uses OpenAI's technology. He caused OpenAI to prepare to contract with Helion Energy, which we talked about on this channel, to buy vast quantities of electricity to power data centers. And then he selected Stripe, a payment platform in which he has material financial interests, as OpenAI's payment processor. Well, as somebody that does a lot of business online, I mean, Stripe is awesome. So, I mean, what else are you going to use, really? Stripe is the bee's knees. But okay, so apparently Sam Altman has his hands in Stripe as well. Okay. And then also he coordinated to launch an OpenAI-powered device with former Apple chief designer Johnny Ive. So we've covered that. I don't know if anything's still happening with that or not, but I know they have been talking about it, causing OpenAI and Reddit to strike a deal whereby OpenAI pays for Reddit content, causing the value of Altman's shares in Reddit to appreciate by hundreds of millions of dollars. Yes, I believe that Mr. Sam Altman did make a lot of money on his Reddit investment. Yes, certainly you can say Sam Altman definitely has been cleaning up on this. I mean, he's got to be worth well over $1 billion for sure, right? Probably in the billions. And on the All In podcast, they were mentioning how much he would earn if they were able to turn this into a for-profit. And that itself would be worth billions of dollars in equity for him. And so in conclusion, they say beginning early this year, and certainly since the Fund No Competitors edict, so when they said don't invest in SSI, Ilya Sutskever's company, don't invest in XAI, Elon Musk's company, right? Since that, Altman, OpenAI, and Microsoft has shown that they have no interest in running a charity. In the words of the Financial Times, they are in full world domination mode. No objective observer can look at OpenAI today and say that it bears any resemblance whatsoever to what it promised to be. Enough is enough, and they're asking the courts to kind of put an end to this. And they also mention here that, AI can be potentially an existentially dangerous technology, as in potentially wiping out humanity. And so they're saying it must be brought about deliberately with safety as the highest priority. And OpenAI's illegal deviation from that mission betrays not just Musk, but us all. So what do you think about all of that? So do you think that Elon Musk is making a lot of good points here? And I'm not even necessarily asking about the legality of it. The podcast, I'll link it below, 80,000 hours, right? So that's dives deeply into like the law and everything else about that. So not even commenting on the legal aspects and who has the law on their side or whatnot. I'm just asking, who do you think is right in this case? So is Elon Musk the one that's sort of getting the short end of the stick? He invested so much money into this company, wanting it to be open source, research only lab, wanting it to be nonprofit. And somehow that completely got derailed, right? And it becomes, much more for-profit, much more closed. And I mean, definitely it does seem like they're in full world domination mode. I mean, they're making a lot of big moves, expanding rapidly. Or do you see Sam Altman's perspective in this? I mean, his, I think, point was, hey, you can't develop something like this without massive amounts of capital. You need the compute. You need the researchers. You need all of this stuff. So maybe this is just part of how to do that. You have to play the game of attracting large partnerships with, these behemoths like Microsoft and trying to kind of use them for your own needs while pursuing your own goals. Certainly partnering with a lot of the hardware companies, partnering with creating their own chips, etc., is making OpenAI more independent, less reliant on companies like NVIDIA, for example. So certainly you can't blame them. If this was any other product, you couldn't really blame Sam Altman for doing the business moves that he's doing to make sure that his product gets out there, that he builds up the client base, the user base, etc. But question number one is it okay to start it out as a nonprofit and then just flip when it's no longer advantageous because you realize that the reality of how much capital is needed, that changed? Is it okay to solicit and get tons of money from investors like Elon Musk under the guise of it being one thing and then switching, 5 years later, 10 years later to something else? And two, when we are talking about AI, when we are talking about AGI, do we want to be playing those like business games and expansion games and full world domination mode games when it comes to AGI? Let me know what you think. I'm curious to know. All the links will be down in the show notes. If you made this far, thank you so much for watching. My name is Wes Roth, and I'll see you next time.